live. We'll do it live. Do it live. I'm rated and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks. 5, 4, 3. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue from you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of green, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, dark of night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Anybody else's hands, this is a microphone. In my hands, this is a pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Anybody else's hands, this is a microphone. In my hands, this is a pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Anybody else's hands, this is a microphone. In my hands, this is a pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. Pipe bomb. So, thank you. Do not attempt to adjust that radio dial. Grapple, this podcast is now officially on the air. You don't know how 60 minutes is. You don't know what 60 is in the bedroom or the ring. If you're a man, you don't cry about it. Just take the rest, the ups and downs. If you're a real man, you never go down, you just stay up. Watchmen! Watchmen! I got it! Watchmen! I got it! Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout something. I got something that tells me what it's all about. Smell that thing? Wanna wrestle? When I die, it'll be here or on top of a wild woman. I hope it's here, but I'll go either way.
Alrighty, fans, we are back. We took a hiatus for a good couple 4 days, but we are now back, and things are good. We got a lot to talk about tonight, but before we get into it, I need to offer you some breaking news. With the launch of the WWE Network underway, the WWE is pulling all licensing material and or intellectual property from YouTube and other such sharing sites. I know it sucks. But in conjunction with this, the WWE has stripped Ismail and myself, Ismail being my co-host and my tag team partner, the WWE is removing us of our previous monikers. And wouldn't you know it, they have gone and rebranded us with new ones. So from this point forward, my co-host will be known as Latino Heat himself, Ismail Santos. And as for me, I will be known as the Appalachia Warrior. Together we make up the new developmental tag team known as the Podcast Punishers. Yeah! So while our agents work out the details with the WWE, we are currently slated to fill the spots of CM Punk, who is now being officially regarded to as being on a sabbatical from the WWE, and an injured John Cena, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But we're going to be taking their place at the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania. Now, not to prematurely give away a spoiler or anything, but we are going to be billed in a charity dance-off match against Emma and Santino Marella, where a portion of the proceeds from the pay-per-view will go for further research on ending Bell's palsy. So stop illegally watching those pay-per-views, damn it, because Emma needs that cure to prevent any more episodes of Witch in the Ring. She is suffering from Bell's palsy, right? That's not dancing, is it, Ishmael?
I've got some bad news. I think that is dancing.
Oh, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. She breaks my heart when she has them episodes in the ring, son. I'm just like, what the hell, girl? What the hell? But anyways, folks, welcome my tag team partner, the Latino Heat himself, Ishmael Santos. How's everything going, brother?
Oh, I'm good, man. I heard some reports that the Wyatt family had gotten me, into the crowd and beat me up a bit, but it was nothing. I'm good now.
Well, that's good to hear. Good to hear. All right, so clearly we got a lot to talk about tonight. Just briefly cover it quickly, and then we're going to jump into something. We're going to be talking about the Elimination Chamber reaction. Zeus. Remember Zeus? Yes, fans. He is wanting a rematch with Hogan, according to TMZ. I suspect he's kidding about that, but hell, who doesn't want to pay off, especially at the granddaddy of them all? Typically, a wrestler wrestling or performing in WrestleMania gets upwards $500K to $1 million just for the show itself. So, I mean, that's some good money to be had right there. But we're going to be covering John Cena's injury, as I've already stated. We're going to be talking about the WWE Network, including some of the fallout surrounding the Xbox users. Also, I'm going to talk about Bad News Barrett and a missed opportunity, or potentially another missed opportunity, creatively. Catcalling. What is up with this catcalling? Let's just briefly touch on this. Ishmael, did you hear them chanting for Randy Savage Monday night?
What don't they chant nowadays? From Michael Cole to Randy Savage,
Well, that was. I mean, I get calling for the Divas during a match that we're just so sick of watching. I can appreciate them, catcalling JBL, Michael Cole, Jerry the King Lawler. I mean, that makes sense. But Randy Savage, I think it's a little bit too late. He's already shuffled off this mortal coil, as it were. So I don't see why they would be doing that so randomly when they didn't even, because there is backlash, and we're going to talk about this as well. There is some backlash going on about the WWE not doing a tribute to Viscera. And so the fans weren't even chanting for him. So I think it's a bit disingenuous. I also think it's disingenuous of this mock outrage, like stemming from the fans within the IWC today. Because I checked the Facebook and I had relevant content to the Facebook page, throughout the day, or try to at least, depending on what I'm working on at that given moment. But as soon as, and I don't even know, fans, and this is why I didn't even put it up on the page. I want to verify the supposed comment from Viscera's wife and widow now, unfortunately, her outrage, because I know a lot of you shared it, and I get why you did. You just wanted to get that information out there, and if it's legitimate in nature, it's justified, especially her outrage. I'm sure she does, have some very, distinct and unfortunate backstage knowledge that we are not privy to, and which has led her to, just the vitriol, the seething hatred that came out in that post. But if it's true, it's tragic, and this is definitely not something you need to deal with in going through the grieving process. But if it's not, it's uncalled for, and it doesn't need to be done. Okay, you don't need to try and prop yourself up by, breaking someone down, which is something else we're going to get into later. Um, but moving on, something else we're going to, obviously we're going to be talking about TNA and the American Wolves winning the TNA Tag Team Champions at a house show, no less, on Sunday. In Morgantown, West Virginia. That's a throwback to the old NWA days, and just propping up house shows, just the unexpected nature. Asterisk card subject to change. And I love it, man. I love that see, everything in life, I keep saying it because it's true, everything in life is cyclical in nature. Where we are today, we're not going to be tomorrow, but we will come back to it eventually. And I love that the business is going back to a nuance that has been overlooked for over a decade at least. Am I wrong?
No, it almost never happens nowadays, though. Title changes on house shows.
Right. It's always saved for a pay-per-view, or in the rare occasion that it's not. Fans and even those within the business is like, well, that was stupid. You should have built it up to the pay-per-view. I disagree. I think it's a lost nuance. It's a lost art. But we're going to be discussing more on that because there's some great quotes that have come out from both Jim Ross, from Stone Cold Steve Austin, from John Cena, even Triple H. Over the past week since we've been away from you guys, so we're going to get in depth on that one for sure. Also, the hate boner, the Mega Godzilla hate boner by Jim Cornette has just been refueled. If Jim didn't have enough beef with TNA, TNA has gone and put someone in charge of booking that has no wrestling background, and it is being spread throughout, the organization as a horrible move. So I'm curious to hear Jim Cornette's thoughts on this when they no doubt will come out. So yeah, we're going to talk on that too, and just the nature of the beast that is TNA and in its self-destructive ways. But I don't want to just completely dismiss them outright. I like they're making gradual steps, and we're going to get into that as well. But beforehand, we're going to take a quick music break, and then when we come back here in a minute or two, we're going to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to cue up some music. I'm having technical difficulties over here tonight where I can't automatically cue stuff up. But that being what it is, I was going to say this for the last part of the show, but I've generated a lot of hate. Well, not so much hate, definitely some heat over which. But when we come back from the break, I'm going to be doing a open letter to Mick Foley, and we kind of touched upon it last week, and we're definitely going to talk about it. Well, I'm going to talk about it, and we're going to do a point and counterpoint is ultimately what we're going to do. I'm going to give my side of the issue, and unfortunately, I think our tag team, we just got together, and now we're breaking up because we're going to be fighting, son. What's up with that? I mean, that's just ridiculous.
We lasted longer than the primetime players at this point.
Exactly. So, and where's our pay-per-view? Seriously. But that's all right. We're going to be doing a point and counterpoint on Mick Foley's just constant criticism of the WWE and the product that's being put out. And in addition to which, as soon as that segment's over, I'm going to let my co-host and tag team partner jump in and talk to you all while I post the article that I wrote about it a little bit more in depth than what we're probably going to cover here on the podcast. But I'm going to throw that article up on the Facebook page so you all can check that out. Ishmael, what's that Facebook page?
Oh, that Facebook page would be facebook.com/Golden Age of Wrestling.
Excellent. And by the way, fans, if you have not done so already, go ahead and head on over to the Twitter. I went ahead and created a Twitter account so that I can provide more availability to us with your thoughts and comments. It's real simple. It's at Grapple This, one word, GRAPPLETHIS, at Grapple This, real simple. So let's go ahead and take a quick music break. I like this song. I think it's going to set the mood for what we're going to be doing tonight. So let's get a little bit funky with a throwback to the 70s, and we will be right back with the Mick Foley open letter, and then we'll get, and I swear to you, we're going to get into everything else as well. So hang on. All right. Yeah, baby, that's a throwback to the 70s. I had to grow out my afro during that song. I'm telling you what, son, that was some good music right there. So, how'd you like that music, Ishmael?
Too, honestly, I love that kind of music. It always helps.
I think it just sets that pace, son, with that little wow, wow, wow. See, unfortunately, Chris Jericho's got a cowbell on his podcast. We need to get a cowbell because I just like it. I don't know. I might be crazy on that. All right, fans, let's go ahead and jump into this open letter thing because I respect Mick Foley. Let me first and foremost throw that out there. I respect him. He has been around since the days of the region of the territorial product and it being regional in nature, and I think that's kind of why I'm just a little disenchanted with him and the thoughts that he's put out there. And specifically, he's just been criticizing the WWE for what 3 weeks now consistently.
At least I would say ever since Royal Rumble, so pretty close.
So, yeah. So anyway, and I mean, I get it, and it's not that I'm hating on him just for the sake of hating on him because it seems like an easy target. Not at all. It's more of the fact that he comes from an era where it was 50-50 booking. And what I mean by 50-50 booking is you'll have 50% of the matches which just pop and just set the tone, the pace for everything else in the show. And then you're going to have 50% of those, what the hell are they thinking matches? But you need to have that because in order to establish a storyline, and ultimately that's what it comes down to, which Triple H himself discussed in the conference call in regard to the WWE Next, and he was talking to independents or potential talent coming up, and what he said was, let me find it right quick. Straight from the horse's mouth, Triple H, main player in the hiring of talent, and also affiliated with WWE Creative, shoots straight in WWE Next conference call about what independent wrestlers need to learn to make it in the WWE. Those whose goal is WWE listen and apply. He said that the moves are great, but the biggest thing they need to learn is telling stories. He said slowing down and letting people digest stuff is important. He talked about using killer moves as a transition spot as being an issue, and he's by and large right in that. Learning the art of storytelling is the most important thing. Now, as a follow-up to that, and it's ironic at best, I would think, but David Otunga on his Twitter today shared that if you want to change, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And right now, I think it's very disingenuous of both Mick Foley and the IWC community, as well as fans that don't necessarily, lump themselves in with the IWC, in suggesting that, the product that's put out there needs to be 100% all the time, when that's never been the case, and it never will be the case, because you have to have such matches, and you have to have such an organic nature to some of those matches, those feuds that just build themselves out of just, the moment, because that's the nature of the sport. The sport is ultimately organic in nature, because you're playing off of the reaction of others. So no matter how well you script it, no matter how many pages upon pages of dialogue that the creative teams write, at the end of the day, you have to come back to what the fans say and how they react. And if it's positive or if it's negative, you have to adjust accordingly. And the WWE is. However, in saying that, you also have to realize that there is a greater psychology going on. They are, by all rights, slow-burning Daniel Bryan, and we talked about it on the last podcast, and we're going to clearly talk about it now. They're slow-burning him to get the storyline to such a point where he can have a sustained run, or at least that's my impression. Now, in doing that, that's not, fine. He's over with you guys. He's over big time. And I think he's trying to play off it a little bit, which can and will hinder him if he keeps, going that route with it. But even with him, it's organic. He's trying to gauge how he should best utilize that in the context of building it to that next level. Because as I suggest in the article that I will be posting after this segment, wrestling in this regard is very much like building the perfect sandwich. You have to have layer upon layer upon layer for it to be just a brilliant, beautiful thing that you're going to digest. And I think right now the fans, and granted, a lot of the fans, and I don't mean this as an insult, it's a cultural thing in as much as it is societal. We live in a fast food generation where we want the immediacy of our desires without putting in the effort to get to the level of expectation or the level of satisfaction that is going to be born from which. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in saying that, um, I guess I'm left with the question: to what end? Okay, fine. You go ahead and slap the title on Daniel Bryan. You somehow work him into the main event at WrestleMania, which is theoretically still possible. You know, they got plenty of time to work that angle. But it's a rush job, and will it have that payoff that you would have like a sustained feud between Ric Flair and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, or Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes? Just to name a couple, great sustained feuds that lasted years. And then when they came together and butted heads, no matter how many times you've seen them fight, but especially in the regard of especially in regard to a pay-per-view, it was still much must-see TV in that it was always new, it was always fresh. And why? It was because of the psychology involved. And that psychology, is crucial. And I think that both Mick Foley and the IWC is dismissing it. And they're doing so at a time when we can't afford to. And this is somewhat to transition into the later conversation we're going to have about the lost art of nuance. And Triple H spoke quite well in his thoughts on the matter, in saying that these guys lack the ability to tell a story. Ultimately, that's where you derive your psychological, your emotional, and your cultural want to buy into something, to emotionally to buy into wrestling. We all know it's fake in the sense that it's predetermined, but the story still transcends it, and because of which the characters transcends it, and that is why wrestling is very much real. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I believe in your upcoming article that you're gonna post in the next few minutes. You talk about the mythology and how, in many ways, they're not just like comic book heroes, but their own mythology. So yeah, it makes sense.
Very true. Okay, so my question then to Mick Foley, and if he wants to come on the show, I'd love to have him. I won't even talk, which you know me, I got the gift of gab. In our last show, Ishmael and myself, we went all night and stayed a little bit longer because that's how we do it, baby. But I won't even say a word. I'll just let Mick just run the show if he wants to come on. But I want to frame the conversation in the light of him offering a creative idea. How do you go ahead and put the title on Daniel Bryan when there is not an adequate heel for him to face off against? Because, the Randy Orton thing's been done. Batista's probably turning heel, and not to give a spoiler, but he draws a lot of heat on this Friday night SmackDown. So it might be a double heel main event for WrestleMania, which it's been done before, and it works well if done right, but I don't know how that's going to translate. But in order for a babyface to just pop and pop as big as Daniel Bryan can, because he can be the next Hulk Hogan, he can be the next Steve Austin, he can be the next Rock, because he has both the skill set, he has the pop, which the pop it's transient in nature. It's very temporary, because one day you're popping, the next day you're not, and that's just the nature of the business. So, you have to fall back on everything else, what you've learned, what you've trained, and what you've refined over the years, through your art of telling stories, through your in-ring psychology. And it is through that utilization that you, regardless of what the fans, on a superficial level feel towards you, like with John Cena, they're like, let's go, Cena sucks, let's go Cena. There's still that respect. There's still that belief in the character, and you want to see that character shine. So and it's only through this process that you get to that point. So again, going back to what my thoughts are in framing that conversation with Mick Foley, what would you do in order to change things at this point? What would you do to give Daniel Bryan, Antonio Cesaro, any of the show members, any of the Wyatt families, your stars who can and more than likely will usher in a premature third golden age of wrestling, which I discussed a little bit more in depth in the article. So you're going to want to read that. What would you do right now where we're still very much in the formative stage of a greater, pop to come? What would you do? Would you go ahead and slap the title on Daniel Bryan just as, here you go, because the fans want it? Or do you just stick to your guns and say, yeah, we hear you, and we're going to play off of that, and we're going to build off of that, and we're going to give you everything you want, but we're going to make it so big that you're just going to love it and love it for years rather than love it and love it for months? Does that make sense, sir?
Yeah, honestly, with the way, I mean, sure, at least a lot of the IWC, they want the instant title change, they want the instant main event, which understand, but at the same time, it does feel, especially at this, and there's only like I would say 5 weeks to WrestleMania, around there.
Yeah.
Yeah, to squeeze that much like of storyline and that build and to rush it all, it does feel premature, to be honest.
It is, and I'm not trying to attack the IWC. I love the IWC. That's why we do this, and I love the wrestling community. The way that the wrestling community came together over Nelson Frazier Jr.'s passing, up until today, and sharing that unsubstantiated quote by his widow. Because I want proof. Because I'm not going. Because and actually in that quote, she attacks TMZ, stating that supposedly TMZ interviewed her and she confirmed that her husband did pass away because of due to a heart attack and in large part due to his obesity. But and so she was saying that no one's talked to me. That's just an outright lie. I understand that the want of people to try and be the first one to address it, bring it to light within the IWC. But with something like this, there needs to be a certain level of sensitivity because this is someone's life and someone's emotions on the line in regard to Nelson Frazier Jr.'s fans and family. And you need to make that consideration. I mean, a lot of the IWC that post stuff, they're young, and they'll learn this through time. But even still, I think it would do them justice to think about that and what you put out there, because it does impact people. People do see it, and if it's unsubstantiated, it does nothing but hurt and further add to what they're already going through, rather than offer them some solace in the time when they absolutely need it most. So I'm kind of sidetracked with that. But going back to the point, we are very much in the genesis of something that is going to translate into a 5 to 10 to, who knows how long run. Because these guys, the Cesaros, the Shield members, the Wyatts, Daniel Bryant, among so many others, coming up through the Indies right now, or even through next, they have all the earmarks of what defined a golden age, which I discussed more in depth in the article. So again, you're going to want to check that out. And that's why I ultimately want to just crawl inside Mick Foley's mind. In fact, the name of the article is Entering the Mind of Mick Foley. which might be a scary thing in and of itself. But people gonna say that about me too, so that's all right. That's all right. That's why I'm trying to understand his side of it, because I just I find it to be disingenuous at best, given his perspective. He had such a perspective coming from the territorial days, where he knew. He knew. I mean, because honest to God, dude, at any show, TV taping, house show, yeah, you had some good matches, but then in large part you had your superstars come out and take on jobbers and just beat them down for a good 3 to 7 minutes, and then call it a day. Go get drunk, jump on a bus, jump in someone's car, or jump on a plane and head to the next spot. But even still, we had a golden age of wrestling that came out of which it's 50-50 booking, and it's always going to be within that range. And sometimes you get 70-30, other times you get 65-45. It just depends. But you're never going to get 100% where every match pops and pops, well. Which Ishmael's going to cover at the end of the show. We're actually starting to implement segments because I want to watch the timing of the show. I'm trying to get this down to 2 hours, but Ishmael and I, we talkers, and we like talking to you guys, and but even still, a 4-hour podcast is a little much, and so we're trying to limit that. But in the last segment of tonight's podcast, Ishmael's it's going to be Ishmael's news and review, or news and reviews of I can't remember the title I gave it, but hold on, let me scroll through my notes because I gave it a nice little catchy title. Oh, I can't find it. Ishmael, wait, here it is. Latino Heat, with the weekly wrestling news and video reviews. And specifically, Ishmael is going to be covering, every week he's going to do a segment on one of the pay-per-views that he watches, and he breaks it down, from an analytical standpoint for you guys. And feel free to hit him up on the Facebook page, saying that he's an idiot if you don't agree with him, or that he's the best thing since sliced bread if you do. So, either way. But he'll be covering that. I don't know, man. I want to understand Mick Foley. I find it disingenuous at best, and at worst, he is just discrediting all of his effort put into building the WWE. But not only the WWE. The WWE obviously is the very pinnacle where everybody wants to go. It's the big dance, as they call it in baseball. Are you going to the dance? Well, I hope to. One of these days, that's what I'm working on, going to the dance. And I just think that Mick Foley, in attacking the product of the WWE at this point, it's a disservice, not only to the WWE and their efforts to build something that's going to be sustainable in nature, but it's a disservice to the fans because of it removes them from their love of the sport. Because then you get into these little petty back and forths, like, well, Mick's right. No, he's not. He's an idiot. He should watch his mouth and be a good company chump. But it doesn't even need to go to that point. But on top of those two aspects, he discredits everything that he's offered, everything he's done, every hard bump he's taken, every dive off of the cage, every barbed wire bat to the skull that he's endured. He discredits that by coming out now and just taking on this fast food generation mentality, or even a unfortunate IWC mentality of attacking something that he knows full on isn't going to be 100% all the time. That's nonsense. It's nonsense, and I don't get it. I don't get it. And you wonder why, people like Eric Bischoff attack, and even Triple H has done it, has openly attacked the IWC and calling them idiots and morons, this and that, which also plays into something else that I covered in the article. It further feeds this thought process by a creative, the creative standpoint, whereby they'll start a feud, like they'll break up like a Tyson O'Neil. Well, not even that, because I think that's a bad example. But they'll break up like the Road Warriors, and then have them fight each other one week, and then next week they're right back to it. And look, they're in a championship hunt, for the tag team titles.
Or the Divas division of today, they always do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it feeds that very mentality. And the rationale that goes behind it is, the fans won't remember that happened 2-3 weeks ago. Really? We're not going to remember that. Yeah, we will. And it's bad writing. It's a shitty perspective that you offer that, but on top of which it's horrible writing. Which at the end of the day, if you want to make it's no longer professional wrestling but sports entertainment. So if you want to make sports entertainment scripted, 90% of the time, okay, we'll go down this road and see where it ends up. I think it's a mistake, but in a large part. But wrestling is always evolving. So if this is the next evolution of it, so be it. We'll go down this road and see what happens. And I say that with the knowing that we will come back to where wrestling was at some point. It might not be in my lifetime, but I would like to see it. And I think with TNA, in putting the belts on the American Wolves at a house show, not only does it differentiate them from the product that the WWE is putting out there, but it is a throwback, an homage to the NWA. And you need that point and counterpoint, because that's what's going to rebuild and rebrand Impact Wrestling at this point. So I say bully to them for that. So I want to understand Mick Foley's thought process, and by all means, if he wants to come on the show, I'll keep my damn mouth shut, and I'll just let him just run it all, I'll let him call the show, and, he calls the spots, I'll be right there. If he wants me to go high, I'll go high. If he wants me, to do a dive over the ropes, I'm there too. I'll let him call it. If and when he wants to jump in on this and further elaborate, because ultimately I think that he needs to do so, having taken such a strong stance and a consistent stance, because this wasn't just one or two remarks. This has been something that's been done over weeks, and he carries a lot of weight. He carries the voice of an entire generation of wrestling fans, and in as such, he should know. And let me go ahead and instill this from Spider-Man: with great power comes great responsibility. And I don't feel like he's best utilized it. Now, I teased earlier, and I just, in again, my thought process on, because I'm empathetic in nature. I want to understand why a person thinks what they think or acts in the way that they do. And one thing that I still can't wrap my head around, why he's done this. But in going through that whole process, this is a soundbite that just popped up in my mind, and I think it's very applicable. So let me go ahead and play this real quick.
That's fine. You either die a hero or you live a villain.
Is Mick Foley the modern day Batman? Hopefully y'all could hear that quote. It was a quote from Batman, where Harvey Dent says, okay, let me clarify. You either live long enough, to be a hero, or you
live long enough to see yourself become the villain, I think, and
yeah.
Or die like a hero, around that edge.
Right. You get the point. So is Mick Foley the modern day Batman? And I teased that on Twitter, and I even tagged Mick Foley because I want him involved. I want him to jump in on this because I want clarification. And I think that he is becoming the villain in this respect. And I don't think, and I know that he's trying to look out for the fans and him too, being somewhat outside the business now. He's a fan, you know, but even still, I don't see this as benefiting either the product, the business, or the fan community. I don't see it. I mean, it's one of those gut reactions that you kind of expect from the Iron Sheik because the Iron Sheik is just so off the freaking wall at this point, especially on Twitter, where he actually today he tried to call out Riddick Bowe and called him a dirty dog dick. And yeah, but that's the Iron Sheik. You know, he can get away with it. Plus, who would mess with the Iron Sheik? I don't care. He's probably what 80 years old at this point. I still wouldn't fuck with him. I dropped the H or the F bomb. Sorry, people.
It's appropriate when it comes to the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, it really is. So I just don't see. I don't think it's necessary for Mick Foley to be playing this sort of role. I think that he's not thinking things out clearly. I could be completely off base, and again, I welcome Mick on the show to just have a go at it. Just to elaborate, you know, where his heart is, where his thought process is, and you know, go from there. Because I think at the end of the day, if he misspoke, or if he ultimately sees it from a different point of view that changes his point of view, you know, I'm willing to accept that, and then I'm willing to embrace him because of which. Because, you know, as we grow in life, our opinions on certain things change. You know, it just happens. So, I'd like to see that. But enough of my thoughts on this. I think I've made a pretty decent argument. I cover it better and more succinctly in the article. So definitely check that out. But I'm going to go ahead and post the article while Ishmael, Latino Heat himself, Ishmael Santos, offers the counterpoint. So go ahead and take it away, brother.
All right. I think if I remember right, when I was writing the counterpoint and really trying to get my thoughts in order, because it is true, slow burning is really a lost art for the most part in like at least the major leagues of professional wrestling, like say WWE or a TNA. You don't see much slow burning like, you know, not even slow burning feuds. Example, the Primetime Players feud that just randomly, you know, sprung out of nowhere, and they decide, oh, you know, these guys, they're kind of, you know, they're a good tag team, but we're not really pushing them. Let's, you know, maybe the fans will like it, whatever. Let's just throw it out there, and that's a mistake in many ways, because you know, a lot of people bash the IWC, and it is true, a lot of them are intensely cynical. A lot of them do adhere to these weird 100%, you know, booking wise, just fly by choices. But I know two examples, or at least two old examples of where slow burning really worked, and that's with Stone Cold and The Rock. They both rose, but they weren't immediately thrust into, you know, main event roles or anything. No, Stone Cold, he used to be the ringmaster, and then he became Stone Cold. He won the King of the Ring in 1996, Austin 316, but then it took 2 years to really sniff the title, even get the title. The Rock took a few months longer, but it was the same dynamic, and for the most part you don't see that much now, except, and I hope we can talk more about the Shield versus the Wyatt match at Elimination Chamber, which was booked beautifully. It was a fantastic match, but it was fantastic because of the way it was slow burning. Sure, they kind of sped it up, but you had like hints of it since November at least, and it was just beautifully booked. However, with the way the company, this WWE, has wasted so many opportunities from from the CM Punk pipe bomb angle back in the summer of 2011, when instead of like really letting it grow and mellow and really spark something, get some more mainstream attention, they just got Kevin Nash into it, and it just kind of fizzled out. So I don't really trust, and I think maybe this is Mick Foley, who's been there, who's been in, I wouldn't say a part of the creative meetings, but he's had some input. He's been they've let him know of what's going on to some degree. And I guess this is why, he's been smashing TVs. He literally smashed a TV with a baseball bat when they didn't put Daniel Bryan in the Royal Rumble a month ago. Which, over the top, but I guess he's trying with his position to really get, people and get the attention of the writing staff at WWE to really start changing things, which I understand. Because the way they're booking WrestleMania in regard to Daniel Bryan, and I wrote it down here, like this is the storyline for Daniel Bryan basically. Ever since SummerSlam, he's been screwed over by the Authority. He's been called B+ player. They've kind of stopped him at every turn or stripped him of the title. Elimination Chamber, Kane came out of nowhere and stopped him from being Randy Orton. And this slow burning would work, but now he's facing Triple H, and sure he'll probably hopefully win. He'll beat Triple H, but all roads in this case, in this storyline, should lead back to the title, and this is why this slow burning is not really working in this case, because they were slow burning him only recently. Ever since SummerSlam, he beat John Cena for the title and he was screwed out of it. And they were trying to build up to it, but the way they're doing it with so many hokey finishes, with so much just hokey ways of holding on to the status quo, and now with this new match and with these new bookings and the Randy Orton-Batista matchup, which I get, but at the same time, it almost, unless the WWE really has a firm plan in mind, unless they really do this at SummerSlam, like the 1-year cycle, and this all feels just kind of like they're spinning their wheels. And the most dangerous part, and then the worst part of doing something like this, of spinning your wheels and slow burning in this day and age, especially with someone who they've kind of not held down, but they've kind of kept him stuck in some great matches, but they've kind of kept him in the same program, is that the crowd is going to keep hijacking shows. I believe following Monday Night Raw is in Chicago, I believe. That show is going to be a train wreck. Not because of any bad matches, but the crowd in Chicago, CM Punk territory, that's going to be a hijacking of the worst degree. And to mitigate that, you need the one considered the fan favorite. Even the casuals love Daniel Bryan too. Maybe not to the degree of a John Cena or The Rock, but I will always be amazed to some degree that out of all the people that have come into WWE, the man we're talking about right now, the man Mick Foley supporting, and the man the crowds are getting behind, is a guy like Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryan, the American Dragon, whatever you want to call him. Because here's a guy, who 2 years ago he faced off against CM Punk for like 2-3 pay-per-views and he lost every time. He's consistently lost, but he's actually reached higher levels of popularity by losing. It's a weird process, because it's like the anti-Hulk Hogan effect, because Hulk Hogan would always win, but here's a guy you have ready-made with a great storyline that you could end, or at least end one phase of at WrestleMania, but now it kind of feels like, honestly, I didn't really care about the Triple H versus Daniel Bryan match. It'll be a good match, but at the same time, I'm not really that hateful of it, and I'm not really that excited of it. I'm not even hateful of the Randy Orton-Batista match. It's just kind of, it feels so slapdash because of the way CM Punk left the company 2 months ago, or at least a month ago in this case. It feels really slapdash in this sense. This whole WrestleMania card should be something that should be planned out in advance, at least since December. Really get your idea around things. But it should be malleable. It should be asterisk, card subject to change. Because you never know, the fans might want something else. Because as far as I can tell, no one really wanted Batista to win the Rumble. That you had a ready-made storyline if you're talking slow burn, with Daniel Bryan, getting beat up by Bray Wyatt or beating him in the opening match, but then coming back and winning. So with this storyline, it makes sense to a degree, but at the same time, this doesn't feel like slow burn process or a slow burn storyline. It feels like they're just spinning their wheels in a certain degree. At least that's my take on it.
And I get that. I definitely get that. But I don't think so. Because they know, and you have to know. How could you not? It's just like the IWC thinks that, the creative team just are so lost in a vacuum that they don't hear them or see them or feel them. Yeah, they do. They crunch the numbers daily. Oh, from ticket sales to buy rates to ratings. It's even calculated out into a science of which wrestler is drawing, at a certain point, and they can chart it. They can chart it back for years upon years, just to give an overall perspective of what type of angles have worked for their characters in certain climates or from one climate to another rather. So I think it's either a disingenuous standpoint or it's an arrogant standpoint, and either way it doesn't serve the business well because again we're going to touch upon it later. We're losing the art of nuance. And now it seems like the IWC, and who's championed by Mick Foley in this respect, or it would assume so. I'm not going to suggest that I understand Mick Foley's thought process. I'm not inside his brain. I'd like to I'd like to have him on the show, or even just to talk to him and maybe write a couple articles, in-depth articles about which. And who knows? He might hear this, he might not, or he might, have someone listen to it and just give him the gist of which. Either way, that's fine. I want to understand his thought process because it feels like, from someone that has covered this sport for 30 years now, and also as a cultural historian with an emphasis in wrestling, it feels like, whereas we've lost so many nuances, nuances that have been with us since, the early 1900s, timed fall or timed matches, the ref being, blind to the foreign object. Like for an example, the match between, not Batista, but Brock Lesnar and Big Show, where Lesnar just beat the dog piss out of Big Show with the chair before the match started. You would not have that match ever start. You would have guys run out from the back and save Big Show, or you would have a slew of referees come and try and fend off Brock Lesnar. Something would have happened. But, for whatever reason, and they try to sell it. They're trying to sell, a bigger story point, which, fine, I get that. But you're robbing it of the nuance. So, the DQs, the time matches, or even going to a time limit draw, the ref being blind to a foreign object. These are very fine or refined nuances that have been in this sport since, again, the early 1900s, that have been worked and worked and worked to an art form, because it is an art form. Wrestling is an art form. In one podcast with a buddy of mine, I got the opportunity to talk to Sin Bodhi briefly. Sin Bodhi of NWA TNA fame, and also WWE as Carney. But it was prior to him. They had on an independent wrestler. I'm trying to remember his name, and I apologize to that wrestler because the kid was insightful and he had a really good head on his shoulders. I'll have to go back and check to see what his name was because I'm doing him an unfortunate disservice right now, and I apologize to him. But he was saying that wrestling is an art. Why do you think they call it a canvas? That is brilliant right there. That is brilliant. And so when you rob the sport of the refined nuances that has made it and has built it to this day and age, this point in this day and age, you might as well be taking the paintbrush from Van Gogh or from Picasso or taking the quill pen out of Shakespeare's hand because that's the equivalent of what you're doing. And ultimately, I don't feel I'm wrong, but maybe I am, and if I am, so be it. But it feels like that's what Mick Foley's doing by, just jumping on this bandwagon of just lashing out and saying, they don't hear us, we want Daniel Bryan. Sure you do, but in what context? Do you want him to be able to have a long, sustained run like some of the greats in WWE lore? Or do you just want him to have the title because that's what you want right now? And if that's the case, the sport's already lost. The sport that has been around since the beginnings of man, it's lost. If we are going to be dictated to by the immediacy of the moment, just go ahead and turn on over to UFC. Because you're clearly not a wrestling fan. You're clearly not someone that has grown through the evolution, the stages of wrestling, and has loved and hated, in certain respects, aspects of it, throughout which, but ultimately you came back to those moments that just drew you in. And ultimately that is the stories that draw you in. And I think that's ultimately my argument. I think we're done with that. But speaking of storylines, we're going to next up. We're going to go ahead and cover the Elimination Chamber and some of the other stuff. And then before we finish up with the WWE, I definitely want to talk about the Bad News Barrett, a potential missed opportunity. I think I'm going to write an article about that either tonight or tomorrow. I got a lot of articles I want to write this week, some of which will probably get shoved to next week, but that's okay. Though I'll get them out to you guys, regardless. So, but we're going to take a quick break because I think we've hit you with a lot, and so we're going to need to just cleanse the palate, as it were. And but we'll be right back, and then we'll get right back into the WWE. So stay tuned, fans. Yes, sir. I had to go ahead and hit y'all with some of that jazz. Well, I just wanted to bring the mood back up because, again, I covered it in the article, and let me just make this the final point. I stated in the article that I'm not trying to make my bones, in creating, not only the History of Professional Wrestling page, but the website that we're hopefully going to have up soon, the podcast, Grapple This podcast in conjunction with Grapple This Productions. I'm not trying to make my bones by attacking Mick Foley, not at all. If anything, and hopefully I made this clear, and definitely tell me if I haven't, I want to understand Mick's perspective because we, at the end of the day, we're all fans of the sport. And I just feel like, by doing what he's done, it takes away from that which the WWE is trying to do in order to further the sport. So, did I make a fair enough, argument? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a fair enough argument. Although, I think I already covered, the whole slow burn process, and it does work. Slow burns have been proven to work time and time again, but in this day and age, especially with the network and them trying to build as much momentum as possible, I think it's more of a question if they're doing it the most efficient way right now.
Sure, and I think that's valid. That's a valid argument to pose. But Mick didn't do that, and it was more of a visceral reaction than a well thought out reaction. Is that a fair assessment to make?
Oh yeah. The moment he started, the moment he started smashing up TVs in response to the Royal Rumble, that was kind of weird.
Yeah,
funny, but
it was comical. I laughed at when I saw the post. But, that being said, I think that it was taking away from the focus on the WWE and what they're doing with the network, which, ultimately is changing the sport in and of itself. It's bringing everything under one umbrella, which is huge. You never had that before. You never had that. But even still, that's not going to happen either. And we're gonna run long, and I'm really trying not to because we got a lot to discuss. But one thing I do want to talk about is, which isn't in the bullet points I provided you, Ishmael, but AAA Wrestling out of Los Angeles, Rey Mysterio's contract. This is obviously related to the WWE. It's reported that, Rey Mysterio's contract's up here in 3 months, I believe it is. And it's been reported for over a month now. But without any, backing, obviously the WWE isn't going to make an announcement of any kind on this one way or the other. But it's been speculated that they're going to just let him go. A, because of his age, B, because of the injuries and such. So it's gotten to the point where they're just like, he's kind of a liability, and there's no real story line that he's going to, best fit into within, the sphere of what we're trying to put out there right now. So I think it's best just to shake hands and part ways. Because of which, and this is something I covered in another podcast, which I kind of I don't like to attack anyone. That's not the role we want in doing this venture or any of our other ventures. It's not my desire to attack or to belittle anyone. However, I don't think that others should be of the mindset to try and belittle someone because either they don't understand their perspective or it doesn't fit in line with their thought process on a given topic. But in this one given podcast that I joined in, because I joined in with a lot, because I like to have these conversations. And I like to impart what information I've gained over the years in covering this sport, and also in being a fan as well. But I brought up the point that the demographics in wrestling are changing specifically over the next 5 years. You are going to have a strong demographic shift for any of you in media. You'll completely understand this. You're going to have a strong demographic shift upward 30% to a more Latino-based influence. And that's in 5 years. In 10 years, it's going to be upwards 50, 60%. Because of which, the nature of the business is going to have to adapt and evolve, or it's just going to be, redeveloped outright. And what I mean by that is that it's going to have to be more lucha libre and content and storylines. Because if you ever watched the Spanish novellas, they're quite dramatic in nature. They're comical. I kind of enjoy them because they're outlandish. Just kind of like Japanese based culture in TV and even in some aspects with the wrestling, with the outlandish costumes and over the top antics. Chikara would be one example of which is more lucha libre in nature than Japanese influenced. But even still, AAA wrestling out of Los Angeles, Conan's going there, and it's rumored that if Ray is let go, he'll be going there as well, which the fear is, and I wrote an article, I'll have to see if I can track it down so I can put it up on the page. I wrote this a couple years back, and as a foreshadowing to this very situation, I covered how either a Mexican-based television company can kill the WWE. And it's wholly due to the fact of the demographic shift. Because unless the WWE, adapts and evolves its product to meet this specific, target audience, someone else is going to come and just eat it up. They're going to see the potential because wrestling by itself is $1 billion industry annually. So no one's going to turn that money down. Somebody will step in. They will frame wrestling or sports entertainment to fit this target audience, and they'll steal that market, and they'll become ridiculously rich in doing so. So the WWE has the potential of adapting and evolving or just being crushed within a 5 to 10 year period. And because of which, that's what makes the WWE network so huge at this point, because they have the foundation to branch out, because where they're trying to add more and more content to appeal to a wider variety of an audience, that they're going to throw something out there more lucha libre in style and in content, or in theory at least. So I think that this gives the WWE a huge opportunity by go ahead and laying the groundwork with the network to transition to such a point, because it's going to make it that much harder for someone else to come and sweep the legs out from underneath the WWE. So it's a brilliant strategy, or it could be. But the WWE doesn't always do what you think would be best for business. But that's neither here nor there. So I think that, Mick Foley, going back to the point, Mick Foley's comments, it detracts away from, especially with the ridiculousness of, smashing the TV and throwing it up on his Twitter, throwing it up on his Facebook. It distracts and detracts from what the WWE is ultimately trying to do, And in being within that family, why do that? I mean, yeah, you got those family members that just love drama. They just love to get together on the holidays and raise hell. Because they get their jollies that way. Well, it seems like that's what Mick's doing, and I hate to see him in that light because that's when I think of him and his career. I don't see him in that light, and I don't want to see him in that light because I respect the man and I revere him for everything that he had to bring to the table. So, all right, let's move on from that. Let's actually lighten it up. And to do so, I think there's no better way to do that than the shit that was heard around the wrestling world. What is up with that? Fans, if you haven't seen it already, apparently, and this is unsubstantiated, but because there's a variety of stories coming out, but ultimately at the taping for this week's SmackDown, a fan either accidentally shit himself or he dropped trowel and just took a big old dump right there. And I would think, and there's even rumors that it was Mick Foley, and that was his protest on, not giving Daniel Bryan the title. But again, this is unsubstantiated, so we have to wait for clarification on which. But I'm just hoping it was some old bastard that just couldn't hold it, and shit happens, literally. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
It's like I saw the photo and everything, and for a second I had to stop and really look at it. Like, are we sure this is not photoshopped? Is this real? And then when I saw that it was real, I was like, I guess that person didn't make it past the dark matches. They really needed to go to the bathroom. They really needed to go.
Hey, they could have had too much beer. It happens, If you have a big meal, especially some enchiladas or something spicy, and on top of which you're putting back some beer, you think you're just going to squeak one out, and then oh hell no, there's a lot more coming. I'm hoping that this was the case because the ridiculousness of it all to me is that someone would literally drop trout and just take a big old dump on their seat, which then fell into the floor. I don't know. I don't really want to know. I think, this is nothing more than comedy relief at best, a tragic moment in someone's life at worst. Well, I would hope so. I mean, it could have been a crazy bastard that, that's outside their brain and then just, thought this was a good thing to do, which would further, emphasize the need for drug testing of fans in the WWE. But forget the wrestlers. Let's focus on the fans right now. I don't know, brother. All right, let's move on. Go ahead and give the fans your thoughts on the Elimination Chamber.
Starting off the kickoff show, which I thought was really interesting because they had it as we predicted. Actually, for the most part, all of our predictions for the entire card were pretty much true.
Yeah, very much so.
But then what I didn't expect, Larry Hennig coming out with Curtis Axel and Ryback, that was fantastic.
That was a throwback to the AWA, son. I loved every second of it. I wanted to see Larry get involved, throw a punch or two. That would have been brilliant. But that's all right. Just to have him there, it was very fitting, and I think it was very respectful of the WWE to allow that.
Let's see. The match, of course, I really want to focus on is the one that was in the middle of the card, the one we predicted would be the match of the night, would steal the show.
Right.
The Wyatt family versus the Shield. But let's say, for example, Big E versus Jack Swagger was a really good match, like a really great opener for the most part.
I told you. I called it. I said it had the potential to be bigger. And it was, and I was glad to see it. I think Big E did himself a lot of justice, and not only him, but the WWE, and that specifically the Intercontinental title, because that match, it didn't, completely live up to these iconic, matches like between like an Ultimate Warrior, Rick Rude, or a Honky Tonk versus Jake the Snake kind of intercontinental title match. But it still wasn't bad, and it surprised me in the sense that both of them stepped it up. And I mean, Big E going over the top like that. Ridiculous. I didn't expect that. I expected it just to be a slobber knocker to steal that from JR. But no, I thought it was a brilliant match in what it was, and it shows the range that these guys have and the level that they were willing to take it to in order to provide a great match. So I was very happy with that one.
Taking apart the next two matches, I think honestly they didn't even give enough time to say the tag team championship match, the Outlaws versus the Usos. That was really, they really rushed that one, especially, and they rushed the Titus O'Neil Darren Young match. That one didn't really mix either way.
Right, that one was over before it got out the gate.
Mm-hmm. Especially, and the Divas match too.
Yeah, that was the hiccup, and you're gonna have those matches because you're obligated to certain matches that, even on paper as a booker, you look at them and you're like, yeah, this, because ultimately, one of the criteria you have to take into account would be, pacing, because you're wanting that up-tempo pace, and it started with the pre-match, and then it continued over to a Big E match. And what killed the pacing was obviously, and then not to be negative, but I mean, these guys are only allotted so much time before the rest says, take it on home, which is code for, do your finisher, get out the ring. So, they're only allotted a certain amount of time, and that's fine in so much as it's part of this scripted nature, which, there's good and there's bad to it. So I'm not necessarily trying to take away from the wrestlers involved. I think that each one of them individually or even collectively have put on great matches in the past. It's just that for how it was scripted, they weren't given that opportunity to really develop, to cultivate, to build that psychology, that in-ring psychology, in order to give a better match. And I think that's one of the fundamental flaws that the WWE is not, trying to remedy at this point. They're looking at a bigger picture rather than the individual picture. And to that end, I'm actually feeding into what Mick Foley, I'm justifying Mick Foley in that respect. Because, I mean, sure, we want the 100% show, where every match is just tempo in nature, or even if it's slowed down, it's got such, intense action and enough time to build the in-ring psychology that it still makes for a great match. Something you're going to be talking about the next day at the water cooler. But that's not the reality. It's 50-50 booking at best. You're going to have those great matches, but you're also going to have those filler matches or those necessary, title matches where, the individuals at the time that are vying for the title, given them the short amount of time, or given the back and forth between the wrestlers involved, it just doesn't translate. So I mean, because we were talking about this during the pay-per-view, and I shared that with you that this is just building to something else, which ties into the Shield versus the Wyatts, which, spoiler alert, will happen again on Monday night, which I think it's better for the sport that it does, because this is the next stage. Right there, the Wyatts and the Shield members, each and every one of them so talented, and they can just tear the house down when given the opportunity, and they showed that. But go ahead and give your thoughts on that one.
When I started watching it and the fans were already chanting "This is awesome" and the two sides were just looking at each other and not even with the bell ringing or anything, I already knew it was going to be, because of the in-ring performances and the storyline build-up and the fans, just everything coalesced into like, I think you, during the pay-per-view, you likened it to the Freebirds versus the Von Erichs of the old
Yes.
80s days.
Yes.
And the first day I tried out the network, I immediately went to see one of the Freebirds versus the Von Erich matches, and honestly, that's the closest thing to compare it to this, because this was, whoever booked this, like the road agent and the performers in general, this fantastic job all around.
No, it was brilliant, and the build up to which, and see, that's what I'm talking about. You needed to build this to an epic level, just like if you're writing a comic book. You know, you can't have Superman take on Batman until you build up that backstory of this, you know, this rivalry between the two, or this level of mistrust between, you know, Batman, you know, keeping files on the rest of the Super Friends, just in using that to cultivate technologies to take them down according to their individual weaknesses. You know, so that level of mistrust or even audacity in that respect to do that, you know, say one would one day somehow turn on the others by whatever means, you know, you have to build those layers like the perfect sandwich, which I know how to make the perfect sandwich. You know, I'm a fat boy, so I know, you know. But so it is because of the story, and they did tell a story, and they, you know, you had to build it to this level for it to pop. But somewhat off topic, the fans from the outset, damn son, they were popping. It felt like a WrestleMania crowd. Just the electricity in the arena. I mean, that was just beautiful. Even, you know, with, you know, the lackluster matches, you know, the female championship and the Tyson O'Neil fight with Darren Young, you know, even still they were popping after that. And especially during the Shield versus Wyatt match, you could not help but get sucked into it. And I think that was the beauty of that moment. And that moment will carry over. And see, that's what they're doing with Daniel Bryan. They're getting him to that moment so that it will translate into something long-lasting. Because, yes, the nature of the fan in the modern age, due to the 24/7 availability, is they want what they want right now, on demand. If they don't get it, you suck, you're horrible, death to you, you know, whatever, you know, and that's just nonsense. Because, again, to that end, how do you have the epic layer unless you build up to it? You can't. You absolutely cannot. Or if you can, you're a smarter man, woman, child than I am, because I can't figure it. And I've been writing for 30 years, you know, fiction and nonfiction. And I've yet to reach that capability as an artist to achieve that epic moment in five words that it takes you 50 pages to build up to, or 500 pages for that matter. So I think it's disingenuous on Mick Foley and on the fans' part, and not seeing what's being done. Hopefully they'll write this and within themselves individually, not the WWE. I think the WWE is doing the right thing with this. But okay, but yeah, so the Wyatt versus Shield match tore the house down. You could have put everybody to bed at that point. But no, instead we move on to the main event and high flying from Christian. What do you think about that?
I was really worried for him because now he has the history of concussions and he's pushing 40. He's still one of the best wrestlers going today. Oh, man, he's still doing crazy stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think he was trying to legitimize himself to the modern fan because he hears his stuff either on Twitter or on Facebook or from friends who are within the IWC or listen to the IWC. He hears his stuff, and I think it does affect you. Look at Ric Flair, who lost his what's the word I'm looking for here? Self-worth. Because the nature of the business, it will eat you, it will chew you up and spit you out whenever and however possible, because that's what it does. Because it wants the very best from you right here, right now, and if you can't give it, there's 5 other guys waiting in line for that opportunity. And so, and Ric Flair struggled with that, and I think that he showed a lot of humanity and vulnerability, obviously, through being so candid about that in various interviews and videos. And I think that that's what you need to go back to understand that these athletes, these people that we idolize or worship are human just like the rest of us. So when they hear all this negative, it does impact them. Yeah, some of which you can brush off, but at the end of the day, it still lingers in the back of your mind. And you wonder, what if I am past my prime? What if I should have left, a few years back when I was at the height of my career? But for whatever reason, I didn't, and now I'm regretting it. So I think in Kristen's case, he was just trying to legitimize himself because he took a nasty bump off of that. I honestly believe he was legitimately hurt after that flying press. But, it made for great television, and ultimately that's what you want. Just like Sheamus kicking in the side of the Elimination Chamber. I thought that was a brilliant TV moment as well.
Oh, I remember, I believe, right before Randy Orton, the timer buzzed and he was the last one out, and the crowd's just chanting, they want his head on a plate, and Sheamus just lets the anticipation build and then just bro kicks the hell out of Randy Orton. That was a great moment.
Yeah.
That worked beautifully.
Yeah. I honestly thought the Elimination Chamber match, it turned out better than what I thought it would. My expectations, I was somewhat disenchanted with Randy Orton winning it, just like everyone else. But that being said, it's a jumping point, and that's what you gotta understand with this WrestleMania, because they are trying to tell stories, they're trying to build stories, and they need to bring this story to a logical conclusion, and of which it can reach that level at WrestleMania. Or you can throw in that swerve to bring Daniel Bryan in, at WrestleMania. There's still plenty of time to work this out. It's not going to happen, whereas, Daniel was now playing the role of CM Punk, where CM Punk is on sabbatical, because ultimately it was CM Punk that was initially slated to take on Kane and then Triple H, as most of you know. But where he took his ball and went home, they still wanted to run with this given storyline, and so as we saw on Monday night, they're building that story. They planted the seed of contention between Bryan and Triple H, and then Bryan challenging Triple H at WrestleMania, which I think that they could have slow burned that over to SmackDown, where he went for the challenge. I think they could have slow played it, and I think it would have been better. But that's neither here nor there. So One thing that did surprise me was Cesaro tapping out to Cena. I did not expect them to eliminate him like that.
Like with the way Cesaro was being built up, and he was if I'm checking the times right, he was like the second guy or the third guy to last the longest in the whole chamber match.
Right.
I thought it would have been nice, I'm sure have the Wyatts come in, eliminate John Cena, but have Cesaro, Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton be the last three to really mix it up.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen that better. And that's why I'm questioning, the intent of having Cesaro, especially in building him up. Granted, Zeb Coulter, old dirty Dutch, shared on Steve Austin's podcast, which you were like, hey, have you listened to that yet? And I was like, nope, not yet. But I got to listen to it this morning. In fact, I spent the bulk of the morning just getting caught up on all the podcasts, or as much as I could. I spent a good 5 hours listening to various ones. But old Zeb Coulter, dirty Dutch, shared that the Americans aren't going to be broken up anytime soon, which they can't be. I mean, the scene was kind of playing where Jack Swagger interfered and got Antonio Cesaro disqualified. The seeds planted there, for, what's the word I'm looking for? Dissension in the ranks. But you gotta slow build that because the fans know you're gonna break them up. I mean, it's what the WWE does. So you have to slow play that to build it into even a feud between Swagger and Cesaro, which I think would make for a brilliant match. If you give them 10 to 15 minutes, I think that could be a brilliant match. I really do. I mean, Jack Swagger's got to work on his conditioning, but ultimately, I think that can make for a brilliant match. And I have to agree with Dirty Dutch in saying that pound for pound, Antonio Cesaro is the strongest man in the WWE right now, especially after big swinging John Cena, which that in and of itself, that takes some serious core strength. I'm telling you, a boy as big as John Cena is, to swing him like that, and keep it sustained for as long as he did, wow. That was damn impressive, and that made for great television.
Did we forget the Batista Del Rio match? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, we didn't. We skipped over that one. It was okay. I wanted more, and it wasn't necessarily bad. It just I wanted more from it, but it didn't reach that level, obviously, or from my opinion. Some people actually around the IWC, there was a lot of buzz generated about it, which surprised me. So
it's odd that they not only had this match on the pay-per-view, but then the next night on Raw, they have the match again, 2 minutes less, but Del Rio wins. It's very odd booking in this case.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we covered that. What do you think about John Cena's injury on Monday night? Do you think it's a work? Do you think that it was a legitimate injury that they might turn into a work? Or how do you feel about that?
I was actually reading about that when it was ongoing, and then they had the little. I saw the network post-show segment where the doctor's talking about the injury. Reading about, I get the impression they had the stretcher job planned out, but I think John Cena actually got a little bit injured because apparently there was reports Eric Rowan grabbed his leg in a weird way.
Right.
And I pinpointed that moment, and yeah. I could see how John Cena could get injured, at least a little more than expected, especially with Eric Rowan. I don't want to say being a stiff worker, but he looks like if he hits you, it'll hurt at least to some degree.
Right.
So This is actually seeing the segment again where the Wyatt family just playing mind games with John Cena, and Cena's actually injured and trying his best to keep it together. That added a lot more to the segment overall, I would say.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because he refused medical, supposedly, and this could be kayfabe. Supposedly he refused medical assistance. But on top of which, JR on his second installment to his podcast brought this up, and his podcast hit before the injury to John Cena took place. So it's just ironic in nature uh, how those coincide. But they were talking about JR and Stone Cold Steve Austin. We're talking about how you reinvent yourself. And for some guys, you go home. For other guys, you turn heel, which both JR and Steve Austin, and I agree completely as well. You can't turn John Cena heel. It would just destroy the character. It will destroy. It's like Hulk Hogan going heel while he's in the WWE, taking on Andre. It doesn't work. It doesn't translate. It would be the worst move ever. And that's what made Hogan turning heel such a beautiful thing, because it happened at such a point that you thought it's never going to happen. It was the swerve heard around the world, in that nobody was really expecting it. And it worked, and it worked brilliantly. So to try and do that to John Cena at this point, it would not work well. So what options does John Cena have? You can't turn him heel. So how do you reinvent him? He has to go home. He has to be off the show. He has to be in the background for an extended period of time, kind of like RVD right now. And funny enough, I saw today a tweet by a fan to RVD, and most of which was incoherent, but you got the gist of which, and it was saying, "You're killing us. We want you back." And if you can build your fan base to that fevered pitch, then he'll pop and pop huge. So I think it might be, fortunate through an unfortunate situation for John Cena, if he is injured again, that he can take some time off, heal up, get surgery if necessary, hit the gym, build up his leg if, in fact it is a legitimate injury, and then come back and pop. But pop down the road when, certain other stories have had the chance to hit, the limelight. So I think, this might turn out to be a blessing in disguise, as it were. Now we're getting close to the 2-hour mark. So I just want to, quickly move on, because again, I don't want to run long. Taker versus Lesnar. Quickly, what are your thoughts on this?
I was unsure of it at first. I wanted to watch it for a while, especially with this recent run Brock Lesnar's been on of having good to great matches with CM Punk and John Cena. And then I saw the segment where Taker returned Monday night, stabbed, or was supposed to stab Brock Lesnar in the hand with the pen and chokeslammed him, and that felt like an automatic WrestleMania main event. So I just hope Undertaker isn't too hurt by the time Brock Lesnar starts doing his thing, because
I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent. I mean, I want to see this, but I don't like the implications of Lesnar ending the streak. I don't feel the streak should be ended. It would be a huge disservice to the wrestling world, the wrestling lore, because it will never be done again. It will absolutely not be done again. You cannot sustain this sort of thing for as long as they have with anyone else. There's too many variables in that equation. Just injury, contract disputes, creative disputes, whatever. So this is something that's immortal. It truly is immortal, and it's something that can never be done again. Point blank and period. So I don't want to see Cena or Lesnar end it. I think it'll make for a good match. I hope so. But Taker's up there, and this might, be his last match. So to that end, I don't know. I'm gonna watch it obviously, but I just don't know if it's going to live up to previous WrestleManias where the Undertaker just shined and damn near, if not completely, stole the show in his matches, like with HBK or even with Triple H from recent WrestleMania history. Now let's. All right, so we covered Cena's injury, the streak, the network. We're going to run long, so let's just. I'm just going to briefly go through some of this stuff. For Xbox users, for those of you that have them, there's been a lot of issues. Either you're not able to access it, the WWE Network, or you have to have a gold membership for which. I think that is a huge mistake by Microsoft, but having to pay to get online in and of itself is not worth it. I think that they do themselves a huge disservice in going that route, but I've said that since when Xbox came out and decided that was the route they wanted to take, just to make even more money than what they're already making. So with these issues happening, hello PlayStation. It gives all the gaming community that are also part of the wrestling community more impetus to finally make the switch. So, bad news, Barrett. I shared a meme from another page. I can't remember the page off the top of my head. So, if you're listening, I'll try to plug you in the podcast next week, so that because it was a brilliant meme, and you really brought up a key point. Can they miss another? Can the WWE miss another opportunity coming up Monday night on Raw there in Chicago? Which I don't know if you saw it yet, Ismail, or not, but there's already the petition been put out amongst IWC, and it's ridiculous in nature, and it destroys the wrestling fan base, and it destroys the sport in and of itself. When people do this, it's just ridiculous, and these people, you need to slap them in the back of the head and say, really, what the hell are you thinking? But for those of you that haven't seen it yet, what it is they're saying that for Monday night, they want everybody to either wear Daniel Bryan gear or CM Punk gear, and the whole night cheer nothing but either Daniel Bryan or CM Punk and boo everything else. I don't mind wearing the gear. It's ridiculous, whatever, but if it serves your purpose, so be it. But as for booing the other athletes, and because these guys come out night in, night out, they put their bodies, their livelihood, and their careers, and potentially their lives on the line for your entertainment. Point blank and period. So for you to boo them over a political stance, you want Daniel Bryan to be the champion. We hear you. We get it. And in some part, we agree with you. But to take it to this level and to boo others for their want to share their art and their love with you, and for you to do that, to take it to that level, it's ridiculous and shameful. It's absolutely shameful. What are your thoughts on that, quickly?
I think like right before we started the show, I was actually reading up about that on I'm trying to remember the forum, but in any case, I'm not really sure what they want to do doing that. I guess it's another case of hijacking the show, of course, to state their mind, but at the same time to boo everyone else, who put their, and it's right, they put their lives on the line, they put their bodies on the line, just to boo them because, say, for example, Daniel Bryan's not in every segment or CM Punk's not coming back. It's, I don't want to say childish, but at the same time, it feels like an over-exaggeration, like they're overreacting to it in some weird way. But hey, they paid the tickets. They want to spend all their money in the front row or whichever row, screaming their favorite off. So, what can you do for that crowd?
I still I think is ultimately a disservice, but so be it. Let's move on from there. Okay, we've basically covered everything, even the TNA stuff. We've briefly touched upon, the American Wolves win the titles there in West Virginia at the house show. Jim Cornette's hate boner, more emphasis for that. Mega Godzilla hate boner! But, so let's go ahead. Let me cue up some music right quick. And then when we come back from the break, we're going to go ahead and close the show with Ishmael doing the Latino Heat with the weekly wrestling news and video reviews. So let me cue up some music right quick. Go ahead and, Ishmael, while I'm doing this, go ahead and share any plugs or anything that you want to get off your chest.
Actually, briefly, I can say my experience with the network as a whole, because I tried out the 1 week free trial for the network, the WWE network, and apparently it's not like say Netflix where you get like a certain time period, you get to try out the streaming for free. Apparently this week, the week I signed up and a few others signed up, this is the only week where you get the free trial. So if anyone's listening out there, you better hurry up and try out the free week trial. Apparently they still take $10 from you, so I don't know about that. Going on with the network, their on-demand was really spotty, glitchy, laggy to a certain degree. Like you try to start up, say, I try to watch one of the pay-per-views I'm gonna be talking about in a bit, Beach Blast 1992, but it kept freezing at certain points. It didn't really work that well. And also the random fact that they have no AWA stuff, which is odd at this juncture. They have some world-class championship wrestling stuff, but like they have like 2 episodes, and the ECW Hardcore TV, they have 5 episodes from 1993 and 1994. So as my recommendation for the network so far, it's a great idea, a fantastic idea, and with all the content they have, and in the months to come they'll have even more, especially in, I believe, at 8 o'clock on the 27th, I believe, already this day, they're gonna have the NXT Arrival, the special show showcasing NXT to the masses. So it's a good deal for the most part. They'll have to work out the kinks on that, though. So.
Right, of course. And yeah, I've heard, in fact, as recent as a couple hours ago, some people that have signed up still cannot access it via Xbox, PlayStation, or even with their computers. And it seems like it's more of a regional thing than anything else. Like certain areas are not getting it, that it'll start the load-up process, but won't, it won't go beyond that point. To that end, I really hate that, because you spend your hard-earned money on that, and then you get that loading screen of death, as it works, the red ring of death. That's got to suck, because we were all hyped. It was like, yeah, I can't wait to watch this, and then you get that loading screen of death, and you're like, I hate you, WWE. I hate you. It's like Cartman. I hate you, Stan. God damn it, I hate you. That kind of reaction. So, anyways, all right. and you're only going to, just for the sake of time, I'm just trying to clarify. You're only going to talk about one pay-per-view, correct?
Uh, I watched 3. I can actually right now, I can say I really want to focus more on the WrestleMania 2000. That one I can talk about a little more in depth because ECW One Night Stand, the first One Night Stand 2005. I'll just say right here, awesome show with great crowd interaction and the fans were really loving it. Some good matches all around, but that were really short. And I believe I was talking about Beach Blast 1992.
Yeah.
Well, first off, just quickly, it's weird that they called the show Beach Blast and it's taking place in June, but the venue is the Mobile Civic Center in Mobile, Alabama. That's already a disconnect to me for the Beach Blast.
Yeah, I don't see that as translating well.
Thankfully, they changed that up for the Bash at the Beach pay-per-views later on. But just from match-wise, the opening match, the man who'd become Raven, Scotty Flamingo, beating Brian Pillman in a 20-minute opening match for the what was at the time WCW Light Heavyweight Championship was fantastic. Just a great match all around.
I remember that match. That was a good match, a good work match.
And then Sting versus Cactus Jack in a non-title match. That was good too. Ricky Steamboat versus Rick Rude. Amazing match.
Yes, and well, anytime, sorry to interrupt, anytime you get Ricky Steamboat, hands down, top 5 workers in the business, you can't get any better. The man was willing to work with anyone and give them their chance, their opportunity to shine. A consummate athlete and just a great man. I met him years ago at a show and could not have been nicer. Could not have been nicer. Very good guy. He's got my respect completely.
Beyond that, I'm amazed that the main event, which was a great stiff match, and it was a time limit draw, 30 minutes of the Steiner brothers versus the Miracle Violence Connection and Terry Gordy and Steve Williams.
Yes.
Just Bill Watts came out the opening few minutes with Eric Bischoff and Tony Schiavone, and you could tell he was just excited to watch this match in particular.
Right.
And it was a great match too. But I feel it must have been hard to work those kinds of matches. It must have been insanely painful.
Oh, guaranteed.
So, but the show I really want to cover to really end the podcast is WrestleMania 2000, because it was, even for WrestleMania, it's a very odd show. Just reading the match card itself, it's very odd.
Yeah, that one. And looking back on the history of WrestleMania, that one sticks out as a sore thumb to me. But I'm curious to get your thoughts. But let's just quickly go ahead, take a break, just to cleanse the palate, as it were, and then we'll be right back, fans. And Ishmael, you'll get that opportunity to talk about WrestleMania 2000. And then we'll call it a night, because I think we've covered a lot of stuff tonight, and it's been a good show. So, fans, hang with us. We'll be right back. Alrighty, and we are back. So, all right, Ishmael, let's finish out on a strong note. Let's go ahead and jump right into WrestleMania 2000.
All right. Like even saying the name WrestleMania 2000, it sounds like a weird science fiction foray, like Blade Runner or something like that.
Right.
But so far as I can tell, the first match was the Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan versus the Godfather and D'Lo Brown.
Yes, I remember.
Like, I honestly didn't remember Bull Buchanan being, like, with the Big Boss Man. I just remember Bull Buchanan from Right to Censor and all those, and that short tag team with John Cena. But starting that off, I mean, D'Lo Brown was doing his thing. Godfather came out with Ice-T rapping his theme, which was kind of awkward to some extent because the sound quality wasn't that great. But match really wasn't bad, and it wasn't great, but as an opener, you got a sense of what they were trying to do. Had some good spots. Weird thing is, Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan went over the two crowd favorites, and cleanly.
Right.
Very odd. That match was, and also one thing to mention about WrestleMania 2000, besides the Terry Runnels versus the Cat, there's no other match on the card that is pretty much like a one-on-one match. Either it's like a tag match, a battle royal, or at least the main event-wise, it's like a fatal four-way. There's no one-on-one matches on this card at all.
Which is contrary to the very nature of WWE, especially in regard to WrestleMania. Now, these type of gimmick matches were, more common with, other pay-per-views, and even to some extent, SummerSlam, which allowed them more freedom. But with WrestleMania, they had I don't want to say a strict a format that they followed, but in truth, they really did. And in fact, leading into the WrestleMania 30 upcoming, they're not going to do, and we covered this last week, they're not going to have 2 3-way matches like for the World Heavyweight Championship and the Intercontinental Championship. It doesn't translate. It cuts away from, the pacing and the hype, the organic nature, the energy in the moment. So it doesn't translate out. So you have to have, fine, you got your 3-way dance, and you got your tag team, but then you also got to have your singles matches as well. You got to have that diversity. But you're right, with WrestleMania 2000, it was all just thrown together. It just seemed like a theme-based pay-per-view, kind of like Survivor Series or Royal Rumble or some of the others. But definitely it didn't have the overall feel of a WrestleMania to it.
Yeah, say you start off the night with the tag team match, and then you go right into the Hardcore Battle Royal for, at the time, the WWF Hardcore Championship, which lasted way too long, 15 minutes. Way too long for something like this.
Right.
And then let me list off, I believe these are either the participants or the champions that they became champions during the Battle Royal. Starting off, Taz, Viscera, Funaki, Rodney, Joey Abs, Thrasher, Pete Gas, Crash Holly, Hardcore Holly, and I believe Taka Michinoku and Bradshaw and Farouk. Those are all the participants in that match. And to say about this match, they had some good spots, but really it was just a bunch of dudes brawling on the outside of the ring with golf bags and cookie trays and and the cameraman was horrible. Like he only focused on Taz and Hardcore Holly for like 5 minutes, and like Viscera would show up, hit someone with a cookie tray, and then leave. So and I believe Taka Michinoku and Funaki, they were at the time Kai and Tai, the tag team,
Right.
and they started beating people up with the Japanese flag.
That's awesome.
But and then it ended actually, I believe. Where did I read this? I know Hardcore Holly wasn't supposed to leave as the champion, but due to some miscount by the referee, he left and they botched the finish.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
You can see that it didn't really gel on screen.
Right, I remember it, but I didn't know that he wasn't supposed to. Well, I just ultimately I didn't know that it was a botched finish.
Hmm.
That's funny.
And then, if I remember right, there was a skit when Al Snow and Steve Blackman, they were still head cheese at this time. I think Al Snow was introducing their new mascot called Chester McCheeserton, which was literally like a midget in a head cheese costume.
Yes.
And so then the TNA come out, Test and Albert with Trish Stratus. They don't really specify why they're fighting or if this is a feud or not. That's just like another filler match.
Uh-huh.
They did not gel it well at all, like these two teams. If it was like Kai and Tai versus Head Cheese, that would have been a much better match. And then in this one, Tess goes over with like an elbow drop, and then for 3 minutes afterwards, I guess Head Cheese, Al Snow and Steve Blackman beat up the midget.
Right.
So I guess they're the heels now. They didn't specify that either.
Yeah, that match, it was over before it jumped out the gate. But it is what it is, and it was very much, as you put it, a filler match, and it was there for comedic elements or potentially comedic elements, which I don't necessarily like that. Although I like Chikara, which is just silly in nature. Uh, it You have to have the timing for it, and that match specifically, it did not translate, especially at WrestleMania, and it's just one of those unfortunate matches that looks good on paper and amongst people of a like mindset, or even you have one guy with the idea and then everybody else are yes men, which happened back at various points within the WWE. And they're like, yeah, boss, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Yeah, that's going to be brilliant. No, it wasn't. But so be it. Anyway, continue.
I believe match number 4 was the triangle ladder match with Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, and the Hardys.
Right.
Like some people say this match was better than the following WrestleMania at 17. I would say this had all the prototypes, prototypical spots that would, start up soon after. But this one, a lot of the time they were really stalling for the high spots, and the crowd kind of felt deflated at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at this point of the card, it was the best match going, but at the same time, it was still.
Well, and I think a lot of that had to do with just the flat nature leading into that match, because you're right, the energy was very much sucked out of them, out of the audience at the time. And as a wrestler, especially at the granddaddy of them all, you feed off of that energy, and if it's not there, it's not there, and it going in. So you're in the mind frame of bringing it back and trying to take those unfortunate risks. In this case, it wasn't so much unnecessary, because you needed something of this caliber to bring the hype back, and just because it was so flat leading into this, it didn't translate well.
What else? Oh, I think there was like a recurring joke throughout the night where, if I remember right, the cat, Jerry Lawler's wife at the time, she's getting ready for her cat fight. Is that the term called for the match.
Right.
And she's naked backstage, and I believe who was managing her, Mae Young. Mae
Right.
Young for some reason. And she's kind of hiding her private parts, or and I don't know. It felt really awkward and out of place.
Yeah, again, that goes back to what we were previously saying, and just the whole concept that it was comical in nature. It's like, for WrestleMania 2000, they just wanted just to take it to like a slapsticky level, a vaudevillian kind of level, and it's not what you expect from a WrestleMania. From one of the other pay-per-views, one of the lesser ones, sure, something, but this WrestleMania has a level of prestige to it that you have to honor, and I think the WWE learned from that situation, and ultimately, I think that's the takeaway from this is they learned from that mistake, and they seldom repeated it. Obviously they haven't repeated it on such a level since then, but even in small part, they've tried to temper it down. Well, I don't know if it was methodical in nature, but they've definitely tempered it down since then, and they treated WrestleMania with the reverence that it deserves.
Yeah, because this WrestleMania was really weird. I'm gonna skip. Well, Terry Runnels beats the cat in a 2-minute cat fight match where she strips her.
Right.
Then Mae Young does the Bronco Buster on Fabulous Moolah for some reason. Skipping that.
Well, no, you can't skip that. That was a brilliant television moment. It really was. And then I was waiting for you to touch on that. I can't remember which pay-per-view it was I was watching the other night. Oh, I'm racking my brain. I can't remember. Fans, you'll know it, and Ishmael, you might know it off the top of your head. But it was Divas, not bikini match, but it was a strip match. The goal was to strip them naked, well, down to the bra and panties match is what it was. And at one point, Mae Young and Moolah come out to the ring, and Mae Young strips herself down to her bra and panties, and before taking out, I believe it was Victoria at the time. And anyways, it's just one of those silly moments that if it's done in moderation and with the right amount of timing for it, it's brilliant, it's funny, it draws your crowd in, even though it's taking you outside of the sphere of wrestling, because you can take the audience too far and in making it farcical, and you destroy the sport. You go beyond kayfabe or breaking kayfabe, and with the comedy, and then it's so hard to transition back to it. So, but in the instance I'm talking, I believe it was one of the SummerSlams. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, no, it makes for brilliant television. Like Mae Young, nobody wants to see Mae Young stripped down, and they even panned over the audience, and they're like, oh, they had that grimace, that absolute grimace on their face, and it's a brilliant TV moment because of it, because you're feeling that at home, and then you see your gut reaction, your visceral reaction translate into someone else's face on your TV, and you're like, yes, I know, dude, I know. It's that kind of moment. So with the Mae Young doing the Bronco Buster, it's just that kind of moment, and when it's done and done effectively, it's a brilliant moment, and it makes for great TV. So actually, that I think was definitely a positive for an otherwise kind of WrestleMania.
The next match, like the Jerry Lawler commentary, this was at the time where it was most perverted.
Right.
Always talking about puppies and all this stuff. And I believe I wrote down one of the lines he used when, at this time, China and Eddie Guerrero were kind of feuding.
Right.
And because Eddie Guerrero at that time was Latino Heat.
Right.
And let me read out the comment. This is halfway through the match. Too Cool in China versus the Radicals and Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, and Latino Heat.
Right.
Let's see. When Chyna's staring at Eddie, Jerry Lawler says, "Look at her staring at Latino heat. She's sweaty and moist." It's like, why not?
Yeah, definitely not something you could get away with during the PG era, the modern PG era. But hey, but for as much as people knock the commentary, I don't. I mean, you have to look at it from different angles. Do you want your Gordon Soley, your Mike Tenay, Gorilla Monsoon, in depth, insightful play-by-play, or do you want your to do your commentators to do bantering, which ultimately it is. It's just idle bantering, comedic in nature, has nothing to do with the match, and it just depends on your preference. And to that end, I respect Michael Cole, JBL, and Jerry Lawler and what they do and what they bring to the table. No, they're not Gordon Soley, Gorilla Monsoon, Mike Tenay, some of the others, but they're not trying to be. They're trying to be more in the vein of Bobby Heenan. And the back and forth that used to take place back in the day between Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Even Jesse Ventura had some wonderful moments, and to this day, I think one of my fondest memories, and I'll have to go on YouTube tonight, in fact, because it's just something that you love. You love to hear, just to take you back to that moment. But for me, one of those moments would definitely have to be Gorilla Monsoon after Bobby just says something completely outlandish or offensive, and then Gorilla just deadpan stares at Bobby before saying, "Will you stop?" Loved it. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what Jerry Lawler, Michael Cole, and JBL, they're trying to achieve. They're not trying to be your Gordon Soley's, your Mike Tenays, or any of the others that were both, commentators, but also historians of the sport. They're not trying to do that. That's not the role that they're playing in this. So I think it's very disingenuous that people attack them. If you're going to attack them, just attack the methodology behind which, because that's not them as individuals. Just like what you see in the ring isn't necessarily the individuals outside of the ring. So I just think it's disingenuous. I kind of like it from time to time. I think it's overdone, but that's my personal take on it. But for anyone to just make these blanket statements, it's disingenuous, and you just really. All right, continue.
Well, a little side note. When watching Beach Blast 1992, Jim Ross, Jesse Ventura, they meld so well together.
Right.
Amazing team. The next match, Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, and Benoit. Because the stipulation wise, it was very odd on this. Let me read it out. 2-fall triple threat match for the WWF Intercontinental, and that's the first fall, and then the European Championship second fall.
That match, it had all the earmarks of a classic, a historical classic, and that transcends the WWE. It's just one of those great matches of all time. It had the earmarks of it, but unfortunately they jumped the shark with that one, with the gimmick. And it happens from time to time, and when it does, it's just a train wreck. And that's what that match ultimately was, from my recollections. I'll have to go back and rewatch it, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, it had some good spots in it, and the some of the interaction wasn't bad, and at the time, I mean, Jesus, all of those guys were in their prime, and they could go, and they could go. But yeah, the gimmick overstepped the potential. And then anytime that happens, it translates into a bad match.
Yeah, well, that they what else? I believe Bob Backlund made the match earlier on a Sunday Night Heat segment of the
Right.
same night, and then Kurt Angle choked him out with a chicken wing.
Right.
Then Kurt Angle was neither pinned nor submitted, so he never really lost. So it's their way of keeping him strong, but at the same time, in a really weird, convoluted way.
Right.
That took away from it. Just like say if you combined the championships and kept the Intercontinental and just let these guys go for 20, 30 minutes, fantastic.
Yeah.
Would have been it. But then next we have, what is it? Rikishi and Kane versus D-Generation X and X-Pac and Road Dogg. What to say about this match? Apparently, and Jim Ross was selling it as Kane getting his revenge on X-Pac and Tori,
Right.
who had played with him around mental-wise, mind games. The match was only 4 minutes, so Rikishi got in his spot of rubbing his ass in Tori's face, and then Kane pinned X-Pac from a chokeslam, and then that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, and that's when the script, looked better than the match translated, and they knew it by having it short. But also the show was, if I remember correctly, the show was running long at that point. So certain matches had to be cut back, cut back or cut outright, and so that's what happened with that one. It could have been better, and the build up to it should have made it better, but again, the business itself is organic in nature. Sometimes you run long, just like we are with the show tonight. It happens, and so you have to make adjustments on the fly. And I think that match, I hope that that's the case, and I'm pretty sure that it was. It just, certain elements had to be readjusted, and unfortunately this match suffered because of which.
That is true, and especially this was right around the time like the D-Generation X of the Triple H and all these people. That this was like the waning days for it until the 2006 reunion.
Right.
So I think this was the same D-Generation X or a year later, maybe less, when Ron Killings showed up as K Quick, if I remember right.
Right.
And so what can you do? Now to the main event, and I believe I wrote down for the main event that the one good thing, one of the best things about the main event was they gave it plenty of time to really, delve deep into the storyline, really build up what's going on.
Right.
However, the format of it was very odd, like Triple H versus The Rock versus Mick Foley versus The Big Show with a McMahon in each corner.
Yeah, that one, oh, God, yes. In fact, I don't want to remember it, but, yeah. All right, go ahead, sorry.
No worries. If I remember right, this was a month after Mick Foley was retired by Triple H in the Hell in a Cell Cactus Jack getup. No, let's see. They brawl for a while, and in the before minute 5 of the match, of a 40-minute match, Big Show gets eliminated straight out, and then he leaves.
I think that just set the pace right there, because at the time, the climate around which there was a lot of heat, and I remember my impressions going into that one was I was actually hoping for Big Show to have a bigger role, but it didn't translate. And so when he was eliminated, and like he was, or the fashion that he was, this is my opinion, and feel free not to agree with it, fans listening, or even you, Ishmael. Actually, if you disagree with me, you're fired, but that's beside the point. It felt flat to me. It felt flat in nature from that point. I think that all the oxygen was sucked out of it at that point, and it just didn't build to that level, especially a WrestleMania main event. But continue and share your thoughts on that.
Mm. Honestly, I don't really understand the point of making this a fatal four-way match if you're gonna give these guys like Big Show only 5 minutes, Mick Foley 20. Honestly, it would have been a better match with just Triple H versus The Rock.
Yeah, but that was already done, and then so they were trying to switch it up. I mean, ultimately, I think that that's what their creative intent was, but it didn't translate as they were hoping for, and that's why they involved the McMahons. I mean, they've got written into the story, and this was prior to what was it? Just a couple years back. Actually, it was probably just a year back, maybe a little bit longer, that the USA Network told the McMahons that they wanted more of them on screen because it helped ratings or just helped the product in general. Now, at that time, back at WrestleMania 2000, this was just a creative device, and again, it didn't translate. It might have looked good on paper or storyboarded out, but in getting it from point A to point B, it lacked continuity, it lacked fluidity, and therefore if I look at it from the lens of being a director. And so if I'm filming this and and as I'm doing my dailies, for those of you that don't know what a daily is where you film something and then you go back and see what you have, and you decide before it goes to the editing room, you prematurely decide whether or not you have something there, or if it's something that you have to come back to and readdress. If not that day, or the next day down the line at some point. So if I was doing that, and I'm watching my dailies, I don't know, man. I would have just chucked what was filmed in that moment and readdressed it at some other point because it just didn't carry over. It lacked, and this is even outside of being at the granddaddy of them all. It lacked that weight, that impact, that punch that you're looking for in this moment. It didn't translate in television moments. It didn't translate into a creative device, an applicable or an effective creative device. It just didn't work. Again, my opinion. Everybody's got them, and so yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's true. This match, with the amount of time it got, 40 minutes or close to 40 minutes.
Right.
It really dragged on.
It did. It really did. It was flat. And like I said, I think taking the Big Show out at that point, what was it, 4, 5? And I don't even think it hit 5 minutes before he was gone.
Yeah.
Was it 5 minutes?
No, 4 minutes 50 seconds.
No, close enough. All right. Well, either way, it just didn't work. And when he went out, and like I said, in the manner that he went out, it killed it. It killed it dead. So, yeah. All right, so what's your overall takeaway from the pay-per-view?
As a WrestleMania, very odd to say the least. Booking-wise, time-wise. It honestly, as a whole, it kind of reflected the main event. It just kind of fell flat.
Right. I think that's the running theme of that one. And I think of all the WrestleManias, even with the little hiccups that's happened in, I won't say every one of them, although I think that's a fair assessment to make. Even with the hiccups, this one was just one giant clusterfuck. And that's the one that you want to take back and redo, especially for posterity's sake. So if you were a George Lucas, you would go back and throw some CGI into that, add some droids, some, mythical creatures flying in the background, something. You want to spruce it up because, yeah, it didn't work well. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to finish up there, fans. We've run a little bit long, not as bad as previously. So I'm happy about this. We want to thank you for tuning in. Next time we're going to get to the chat room, and hopefully we're going to figure out, and I'm going to try and work on that this week, on how to take phone calls, because we do want to incorporate each and every one of you into this conversation. That's why we have this conversation, and we definitely want your feedback. So I apologize, but next week we will definitely get to you guys, or try our very best to. We just have so much content to cover, to keep you up to date on everything, and that we shove so much at you that sometimes we run long. We're working on it. We'll get better with each and every show. So stick with us. Thank you again. Go to the Facebook page. Ishmael?
Facebook.com/Golden Age of Wrestling.
Excellent. That's a hot tag right there, son. Go to the Facebook page, click on the notes section, and check out my newest article, Inside the Mind of Mick Foley. I think you're going to want to read it. I think it made for a good article. So, and guys, again, we thank you. We love you. And stay strong. Stay up. And I'll see you at the matches. And we'll see you next week. So I'm going to send you out on a great song. And Ishmael, we will talk soon.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
I'll buy a round for Gordon solely 'cause he brought the world to me. Jack Briscoe hacksaw and old Big Dust on a black and white TV. Could put an arm bar or a sleeper on my sister by the time that I was 3. I'll buy a round for Gordon solely. He brought the world to me. I'll buy a round. Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers, and all them other cottoners, they would get down on a Saturday night. Down in the arena, them old clocks, they would clean them, and the action, it was out of sight. Dirty Dick Slater and Mean Ox Baker, they could tag team perfectly. Ricky Steamboat and Killer Carl Cox on a black and white TV. I'll buy a round for Gordon solely. He brought the world to me. I'll buy a round. A figure 4 or a crossover hold, it was Gordon calling all the moves. Superstar Billy Graham, you could like him, you could hate him, he was out there getting all the moves. Dirty Dick Slater and Mean Ox Baker, they could tag team perfectly. Ricky Steamboat and Killer Carl Cox on a black and white TV. I'll buy a round for Gordon solely. He brought the world to me. I'll buy a round. Whether you like it or you don't like it, you better learn to love it. You better learn to live with it. It's the best thing going. Today. Now we go to school. Jack Briscoe hacksaw and old Big Dust on a black and white TV. Could put an arm bar or a sleeper on my sister by the time that I was 3. I'll buy a round for Gordon solely. I'll buy a round. Michael B.S. Hayes and the Fabulous Freebirds. Mr. Wrestling number 1 and 2. The Mongolian Stomper, the Missing Link.
Mark Maniac Lewin, the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan, back in TA. I buy around for gold and solely. You brought the world to me. I'll buy around